$80 million. That is roughly what travelers were owed for cruises and tours they had paid for but would never take, when a single Boston cruise company filed for bankruptcy in the summer of 2023. The court papers listed about $80.3 million in customer claims for future trips against only $28 million in unpaid bills. The average trip these customers had bought cost around $15,000, and when the bankruptcy was done, there were no cash refunds. The people who were owed the money were offered a credit toward a future trip with the company that bought the wreckage. River and small ship cruising sells itself as the grown-up choice. No water slides, no crowds of 6,000, no casino. A small ship on the Danube or the Mississippi, a quiet dining room, a refined itinerary, and a clientele that skews older and more affluent. It feels like the safe, sensible end of the cruise business. But the documented risk in this part of the industry is not a norovirus outbreak. It is the balance sheet of the company holding your deposit. Between 2022 and 2024, 4 well-known names in this segment collapsed or shut down, and the deposits did not always come back. Today we are going through 5 river and small ship cruise lines whose documented record gives you specific reasons to look more carefully before you book, and 5 that have earned genuine trust through independent rankings and the operating stability the others could not deliver. No brand on this list paid us. This is purely our research. Welcome to the Hidden Boarding Pass. 5 is Crystal Cruises, in the form the company took before 2022. This is the entry most travelers will find hardest to believe because Crystal was not a budget operator. For years, it was the most awarded luxury name on the water. The line people chose precisely because it sat at the top of the price range. On January 18, 2022, Crystal suspended every voyage after its parent company, Genting Hong Kong, filed for provisional liquidation. Reporting at the time described more than 20,000 booked passengers and about 1,200 crew left in limbo. It got stranger from there. A United States judge granted an order to seize the Crystal Symphony over an unpaid fuel bill, and the ship diverted toward the Bahamas to stay out of reach. Crew members went without pay. The Crystal brand and 2 of its ships were later sold at auction to Abercrombie & Kent for about $150 million. And Crystal sails again today under that new ownership. The line on the water now is a different company. The cautionary tale is what happened to the old one. For the traveler who assumed the most expensive, most decorated line was automatically the safest place to leave a deposit, January 2022 is the correction. 4 is American Queen Voyages. This was not a fringe operator either. It was the largest river cruise company in the United States, running paddle wheelers and expedition ships on the Mississippi, the Columbia and Snake Rivers, and beyond. On February 20th, 2024, it ceased operations. Its parent, Hornblower Group, announced it would be acquired by strategic value partners and file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy with $121 million in new financing and a plan to cut roughly $720 million in debt. American Queen Voyages told customers their canceled cruises would be refunded and set up a claim process that asked affected guests to submit documentation of their booking, their payment method, and the amount they were owed. That is the more orderly end of these stories, and it deserves to be said plainly. But it still meant thousands of travelers who had booked a domestic river cruise, often specifically to keep things simple and close to home, were suddenly filing paperwork to chase money they had already paid. For the American who picked a Mississippi paddle wheeler to avoid international risk, the risk turned out to be sitting in the company's own accounts. 3 is Grand Circle Cruise Line and its sister brand Overseas Adventure Travel. This is the only entry on the avoid side that is still operating, and it belongs here for a different reason than the others. Grand Circle is one of the largest sellers of river and small ship trips to Americans over 50. Its documented record is in the complaint files. The Better Business Bureau profile for Overseas Adventure Travel logs a long history of complaints, including refunds delayed for months and refunds made conditional on a customer signing a release agreement. During the pandemic, the Massachusetts Attorney General's office received more than 400 complaints about the company. There is also reporting, which we frame as reporting and not as a finding, that the company's bookings fell sharply by 2025 and that a planned sale did not close, raising questions about its financial footing. There is no bankruptcy on record as of this recording. The point of this entry is not that Grand Circle has failed. It is that a company carrying that volume of refund complaints, serving an older clientele that often pays well in advance, is exactly the kind of operator a careful traveler checks before sending a deposit. For the loyal repeat customer who assumes years of business buys protection, the complaint record is the part of the relationship that is not reciprocal. 2 is Life at Sea Cruises, operated by Mirai Cruises. This one is included as the most extreme documented version of the deposit risk, and it should be labeled honestly, it was a residential world cruise, not a river line. The pitch was remarkable. 3 years at sea, a cabin you live in, a single fare paid up front. The voyage was scheduled to depart on November 1st, 2023. The ship was never secured and the cruise was canceled. By then, passengers had paid tens of thousands of dollars each. Press coverage documented people who had sold their homes or wound down their businesses to move aboard a ship that did not exist on the day it was supposed to sail. The company said it would repay customers in monthly installments. A business that has to return your money in installments is telling you something important. It did not still have your money. For anyone who has ever been tempted by a once-in-a-lifetime sailing that asks for the entire fare years in advance, Life at Sea is the documented warning about what pay now, sail later can actually mean. One is Vantage Deluxe World Travel, the company from the open of this video. Vantage was a Boston-based operator of river cruises, small ship expeditions, and escorted tours, and it earns the top of this list because the documented harm was the largest and the cleanest. It ceased operations on June 12, 2023, and filed for Chapter 11 in the United States Bankruptcy Court for the District of Massachusetts on June 29th. The filing listed about $80.3 million in customer claims for trips that would never happen. The Massachusetts Attorney General's office had received 1,120 complaints about the company since 2020. Here is the detail that defines this entry. The bankruptcy contained no provision for cash refunds. The buyer, Pacific Travel Partners, a subsidiary of Aurora Expeditions, won the assets at auction in August 2023, and customers owed money were offered a future trip credit rather than their cash back. People who had paid $15,000 for a cruise were handed a coupon to sail with a different company. For the couple who paid for a river cruise a year in advance and assumed the money was simply being held in trust for them, Vantage is the documented proof that it was not. You have heard the 5 lines whose records give you reasons to look more carefully before you book. Now let us tell you about 5 that have earned the trust those brands could not keep. Subscribe to the Hidden Boarding Pass and hit the notification bell. Let us finish this. 5 on the buy side is American Cruise Lines. This is the easiest first river cruise for most Americans because it never leaves the country. American Cruise Lines is the largest river cruise line in the United States, with about 28 small ships and more than 50 domestic itineraries on the Mississippi, the Columbia and Snake Rivers, and protected coastal waterways. No passport, no international flights, no currency to change. In the new U.S. News Best River Cruise Lines ranking published May 28, 2026, it placed 7th. It was also the most awarded U.S. river line of 2025, including World Travel Awards titles for the world's leading river cruise company and the world's leading small ship line. For the traveler who wants the small ship experience without the complexity of an overseas trip, this is the lowest friction place to start. 4 is Avalon Waterways. Avalon placed 4th in that same U.S. News ranking. It is part of the Globus family of brands, a tour company that has been operating for decades, and that lineage matters in an episode about solvency. The whole avoid side of this video was about deposits handed to companies that could not survive. Avalon sits inside one of the most established travel groups in the business. Its European river product is all-inclusive in the ways that count, built around panorama window suites and it competes directly on value with the pricier luxury names. For the traveler who wants a mainstream European river cruise from a parent company with a long track record, Avalon is the sensible middle of the market. 3 is Uniworld Boutique River Cruises. Uniworld placed second in the U.S. News ranking, behind only the line we will name at number 1. It is the boutique luxury end of river cruising, with heavily themed, individually designed ships and a fare that is close to all-inclusive, which U.S. News specifically credited the top lines for. It is part of the Travel Corporation, another large established travel group rather than a thinly capitalized startup. For the traveler who wants the river version of a small luxury hotel and who learned from the first half of this video to ask who actually owns the line, Uniworld answers both questions. 2 is Viking. Viking placed 3rd overall in the U.S. News ranking, but it earned the highest average expert score of all 10 lines the editors evaluated, and it was recognized with 6 major industry awards across 2025 and 2026. Viking runs a fleet of more than 80 river ships, which is its own kind of safety signal because that scale is hard to fake and expensive to sustain. It sails the rivers of Europe and also operates on the Mississippi, and it holds a strict adults-only policy that defines the onboard experience. For the traveler who wants the most proven workhorse in river cruising, backed by the deepest fleet, Viking is the pick just below the top. 1 is AMA Waterways. AMA Waterways placed first in the inaugural U.S. News Best River Cruise Lines ranking, the only major American ranking dedicated specifically to this category. The recognition is not limited to one source. Forbes and Travel and Leisure both named AMA Waterways the #1 Danube cruise line in 2025, and it has been voted Best River Cruise Line by Cruise Critic. It is privately held, founder-led, all-inclusive, and known for culinary programming and active shore excursions. For the traveler who wants the gold standard in river cruising and a company whose entire reputation is built on this one thing done well, AMA Waterways is the top of the list. 3 things protect you in this part of the cruise business, and none of them is about the buffet. The first is how you pay. Use a credit card, never a check or a bank transfer. A credit card gives you chargeback rights under the Fair Credit Billing Act if the company never delivers the trip. And that is the exact path that worked for many Crystal and Vantage customers who had paid by card. The second is your insurance. Buy travel insurance from an independent provider, not from the cruise line, because a policy sold by the operator can fail when the operator fails. Look specifically for supplier bankruptcy or financial default coverage and confirm your line is a named covered supplier. The third is the deposit itself. Be cautious with any company that wants the full fare a year or more in advance, or that promises to repay you in installments if something goes wrong. A cruise line that needs you to act as its lender is telling you where it stands. The $80 million Vantage owed its customers is in a Massachusetts bankruptcy filing. The Crystal Symphony seizure order is in the federal court record. The American Queen Voyages shutdown is in its parent company's own restructuring announcement. None of it was on the booking page when the deposits were taken. The cruise itself was never really the risk. The company holding your money was. Share this video with someone who is about to put a deposit on a river cruise and has not checked who actually owns the line. If the hidden boarding pass has been valuable to you, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. And remember, the truth is not always on the boarding pass.